When you talk about SCP subjects that should have never been found, you can't go too far without mentioning SCP-201, aka the Empty World. The subject itself is not only a harsh reminder of the possible future our world might face, but it is also a clear symbol of the Scarlet King's true power. Greetings, my like-minded comrades. Detective Nicolette here, and if you didn't already know, the set reality we currently live in is just a 1 in a billion realities and possibilities before it. An SCP-201 is actually a member of these realities. The subject belongs to the Yucca class, and the portal to this subject is currently being held in a special containment enclosure at Site-97 within the SCP Foundation. Every employee assigned to SCP-201 is advised at all time not to go within 40 meters of the subject. In the event that any work must be carried out on SCP-201, the said work must be done via a remote-controlled drone, while within the containment area, personnel must be accompanied by 2 members of the security team, all of whom are held securely in place with the use of restraint harness with safety ropes attached to the walls of the chamber. These ropes give the SCP personnel the freedom to go within 3 meters of the minimum safe area. If an employee were to exceed this area without authorization to do so, he will be removed from the containment area immediately and disciplined accordingly. Any personnel that comes under the influence of SCP-201 are to be assigned a time and date of exposure, disappearance, and return, along with the individual's personal information, all of which must be recorded in Log 212, aka 2. SCP agents were also advised to recover all returning Class D test subjects for an immediate debriefing, and their findings must be recorded in Log 212. SCP-201 was initially thought to be just a regular old piece of medical equipment, which in a way resembles an IV stand if we disregard the other glass and metal items attached to it. The subject measures at about 1.8 meters or 6 foot in height and weighs a total of 36.5 kilograms or 80 pounds. The metallic parts of the subject are all made from both steel and brass, with each part connected via rubber tubing. The 2 IV bags, on the other hand, are both porcelain, with the top part open. SCP-201 was recovered by the Foundation in the hospital of a local town somewhere in the Middle East of Alaska. It was found in a long unused storage area with no record of its use appearing in any of the hospital logs, and from the recorded videos by the Foundation, not only was the hospital abandoned for at least 2 years, the town itself was completely deserted. After a series of tests by the Foundation, they concluded that the effects of SCP-201 can be felt within 30 meters of the subject. This effect can also lead to the displacement of the individual into another reality in general. It also occurs at random intervals, with some test subjects remaining completely unaffected after they were exposed to SCP-201. In my hand lies a proof of all test practices carried out on the Empty World. The first ever experiment was with 2 Class D personnel. After both were exposed to subject SCP-201 at the same time, the first subject was immediately displaced from our reality, with the second one following after an hour. The same can be said for the third subject used in this experiment, but he lasted a total of 48 hours in our reality after exposure before he was eventually displaced to the Empty World. There are other instances with different times of displacement attached, but this particular instance was the longest one ever recorded. The Foundation believes that the portal's displacement time varies mainly because of the nature or size of what is about to be displaced. Although the idea does make sense, there is still a flaw with that theory. I'll be speaking more on that later. Dr. James Brown, the head of research on SCP-201 with the help of returning Class D employees, described the Empty World as a world that looks very similar to our own. He describes it as a world that could be or might have been, which implies that he believes the dimension within SCP-201 is in fact ours in another timeline. And although the Empty World does look like ours, it does, however, have some exceptions. First, it is apparently in a state of of constant twilight, with no sun or moon visible at any time. Second, it also contains large banks of very dense gray fog traveling very low to the ground, and these fog banks are unaffected by wind and can make exposed skin feel very sticky and dirty. Third, there is no plant or animal life anywhere in the world. All places of human habitation, including major cities, appear as if all life suddenly vanished in the same instant. Fourth, most, if not all, electrical systems appear to be broken or without power. And finally, the air will randomly take on a gray-brown tint, accompanied by strong winds. According to Log 212, every displaced Class D personnel reported an initial feeling of surprise, shock, and curiosity upon arriving in the empty world, and these feelings were immediately replaced with some very strong feelings of fear and loneliness. The nature and severity of these feelings varies widely with each individual subject and the time of their displacement. Once their time on the empty gone, the subjects are immediately teleported back to our reality, and due to the sudden change or reintegration, every Class D personnel experiences a great deal of shock, with most of them ending up with lasting psychological damage. Those who spent more than 3 months in the empty suffer permanent brain damage and are immediately exterminated by the Foundation. This brings us back to our original understanding of realities and portals. Although I'm not certain, but I do believe that the empty world is just another reality created by the Scarlet King himself, much like the infinite IKEA. But if that was the case, why exactly was every displaced Class D personnel unable to encounter anyone else while they were in the empty world, much like the infinite IKEA? Well, it could be that this particular dimension is more of a representation of what he intends to do with our world, owing to the fact that the majority of all SCP subjects are reasons, like the infinite IKEA was a means to trap and separate humans from their own reality. The empty world was a vision he made to show humans their inevitable fate, and death, also known as SCP-2935, was a means to exterminate some humans or SCP subjects. If you look closely at these 3 base realities, you'll notice a striking resemblance within heaven, purgatory, and hell. So, was the Scarlet King trying to replicate these beliefs? Well, that's a question only he can answer, and I'm not interested in asking him. Looking back on Log 212, I did find a test subject that was in a way too intriguing to disregard. He was simply referred to as Test Subject M221. The log states that he spent a total of 58 days in the empty world, but it was his debriefing that made me question my original belief in what I already know. He started off by repeating a bunch of words, which mostly included stay, with, and me. When he was asked what he saw in the reality, he mumbled the same words, him and it, before his first briefing was cancelled and rescheduled. 5 days later, he was debriefed again. And this time, he spoke more humanly. He claimed there was nothing in the world and all he could see was destroyed structures with no one in sight, even after he explored what he claimed was 1,000 kilometers on foot. The Foundation also inquired about what he meant by him and it in his first debriefing, but later dubbed it as words from post-traumatic experience. When he was asked how he managed with hunger and thirst, all he could say was that during his time there, he felt no hunger or thirst. From this interview alone, I was able to draw out some facts, the first being that he must have seen something or someone in that world, and the second being the nature of both the empty world and SCP-201. If I am to make you believe my theory, we must go back to some of the experiments and try to understand the reason why no other person exists in the empty world besides the displaced individual. Well, that part is explained by the empty world itself. A day on Earth is caused by the full rotation of the planet around its axes, and this occurs in 24 hours. But if a planet were to rotate at a speed that is, let's say, 10 times that of Earth, then it could be possible that an hour in the empty world is 24 days on Earth. This could explain why the test subjects never felt hungry or thirsty even after 58 days on the planet. This is still to be proven, of course, but I do believe it is a possibility. I also believe that some of my theories that both the SCP Foundation and Dr. James Brown tried to create about SCP-201 are false, most especially their belief about the varying time displacement of each test subject. My understanding on that particular point is that SCP-201 teleports whoever came within its zone first, even if the person entered a millisecond before the other person. Sure, it may seem too plain, but if you take what I previously said into consideration, a millisecond on the empty world would most likely be an hour on Earth. And for that reason, it is also possible that multiple versions of the empty world exist with each passing millisecond, which explains why no two Class D test subjects ever reported seeing another Class D test subject in their briefing even after exploring the planet. What this means is that although test subjects are displaced to the same world, that doesn't necessarily mean they were displaced to the same reality. Let's not forget about what test subject M221 might have seen in the empty world. Although I can't say for sure what he saw, but my best guess would be that it and him he was referring to was in fact the Scarlet King. It could be that the Scarlet King specifically chose this man for something because he was the only one that was recorded to ever imply seeing someone or something in the first briefing. It does raise the question as to why the Scarlet King didn't pick more people like he did this particular test subject, but it's safe to say that that would raise too much suspicion, especially if multiple people report seeing something in the empty world. My best advice would be for the SCP Foundation to keep an eye on test subject M221, at least until they figure out his purpose. My thoughts on SCP-201 are pretty straightforward, but I still hope to get a chance to inspect this subject further. At least answer questions like, why would the Scarlet King use an IV stand for such an important subject? Is the empty world actually our planet? I plan to get answers to these questions, and I'll also need your help. So, don't forget to leave your thoughts and ideas about this subject in the comments section below. Like the video and subscribe to my channel because I have many more videos on the way. Farewell.